welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this galaxy themed bowl, which was inspired by a demonstration that I watched at the Woodturning Weekender. So I was inspired to make this bowl after watching one of David Lowe's demonstrations, and I basically just copied his idea. Complete credit to him for design and all of the aesthetics of it. So essentially what he does is turns the bowl, but then he does a splatter technique over black ebonising lacquer. I didn't use ebonising lacquer and I didn't use exactly the same paints, but it still creates the same effect, and I'm really happy with the depth and the overall finish of the piece. I think I've done a nice job on this and I'm really happy with it, if I may say so myself. So today we're going to go over how I made this galaxy themed bowl, and hopefully you guys will be inspired to go and make one yourself. So let's get going with this video. I started out by roughing the blank around. Now, I haven't had a huge amount of experience with the bowl gouge, so this was only about the third project I had done with it. So I'm just getting to grips with how to use it, but I'm slowly starting to understand the bevel angles and all of that sort of stuff. As you can see, the shavings were flying off the tool here, and it didn't take long to get the bowl shaped to the right dimensions. I really enjoy turning beech. It turns like butter, and it also finishes really well. And it's also quite a cheap timber, which makes it great for practicing with. For the whole project, I just used the Crown M42 half-inch bowl gouge, which I really like, and it's a really nice tool to use. After I'd shaped the outside of the bowl, I then moved on to adding some embellishments to the bottom. I decided to add 3 grooves, just to add a bit of an accent to the piece, and when it's placed on a table and people lift it up, they can see that time has been taken to finish the bottom as well. After all of this, I moved on to sanding. I started with 120 grit, and then I moved up through 240 grit, 320 grit, 400 grit, before applying a 1500 grit like I always do. After that, I then moved on to truing up the front of the bowl blank, and then started just to roughly hollow the interior so I could have a rough idea of the proportions that I was going to work with. I then made sure to sand the front face of the bowl really well, as this was where I was going to be sealing the timber and then applying a black paint over the top of that. So I started by sealing the wood with a cellulose sanding sealer, and then I put some black spray paint over the top of that. I ended up doing about 3 coats. So these are the 4 colours that I've decided to use to make the stained platter. So as I said, I've chosen these 4 colours of iridescent paints. Never used these before, so we'll see how this goes. But I have seen them used before and I know they work, but it would just be how good I can get them to work. So I've got a piece of paper here, or plastic even, which is the old packaging to the 2021 goodie bag from the Woodturning Weekender. So I'm going to put that onto there, then I'm going to take a toothbrush and I'm going to splatter it onto this, which is now dry. Hopefully it'll look good. So let's get going. As you can clearly see here, you can see the outline of where I was going to hollow. This really helped because it made sure I could see where I really wanted to get the majority of the paint applied. Now, to apply the paint, I just used a toothbrush. Ideally I would have used a stiff nylon brush, but I didn't have one and didn't really want to buy something else for the project, as you can do it perfectly well with a toothbrush. You just have to be a bit more careful with how close you get to the timber. So I started by using a range of different paints from Chestnut Products. They're all the iridescent ones. I tried all of the different colours, all the blues, all the pinks and the purples. I left out the green, the red and the yellow, as I didn't think that would suit the project. But I'm really happy with the colour and the depth I got of the piece. So we've got the blank back on the lathe, and as you can see the paint looks rather cool. It's really hard for the camera to pick it up. I don't know what I can do, but it's got so much depth of colour and I'm really happy with it. So all we need to do now is come round to the side, give this a little bit of a sand, just because there's a bit of overspray. Nothing much, I'll just start with probably 240, maybe 120. I'm going to try 240 first. We'll get the outside sanded, then we will move on to the interior. I'm going to remove this centre bit here. I'm going to go roughly where that outline of that circle is. You can just about make it out. I made a point so I knew roughly where I wanted the majority of the colour to be put on. And then after that we'll spray it with some sealer, or lacquer even, and then hopefully that'll be done. And I'm going to put some Woodturner's blend on the outside, as I think that's the right finish for this. We want natural wood with the contrast on the top. And then we're going to run 2 grooves in it after that. So let's move on to hollowing the interior. As I didn't mask off the piece, unfortunately I had to go back to sanding. Now I thought I could get away with just using 240 grit and working my way up, but unfortunately that took too long to remove the paint. So I went back to 120 grit, then 240, then 320, then 400, and then 1500 all over again, which got rid of all the paint and left a really smooth finish. I then moved on to hollowing out the interior of the bowl. Now I only wanted to hollow a small proportion of the bowl, so again I just used my half-inch bowl gouge here. I just made sure to constantly check the depth as the last time I used the bowl gouge I ended up going through the bottom of a bowl, and I really did not want that to happen after I'd achieved this really nice effect. So after I was happy with the depth, I ended up sanding it. So I started with 120 grit and then worked up to 1500 grit to really give it a smooth finish. So we've got the rough turning done and colouring, and I am so happy with the colour and the depth on this. It's got a really nice shine, even though it's a matte paint. The paint's really brought out. I have just put a tiny bit of water on it just to clean the dust off, and then we've got that lovely inside and that lovely outside. So we're now going to actually put some finish on it. I'm going to use, you'll never guess, Woodturner's Blend on this bit, Woodturner's Blend in the outside, or I might lacquer the whole of the inside. I haven't decided yet, but we need to have a think about that. So I've got the piece back on this piece of wood, and we're going to be using some Chestnut Prolux acrylic satin lacquer over the top of this. So hopefully that should really just protect it all and bring out the shine in the wood. I then applied 2 coats of satin lacquer. After that I then moved on to using some cellulose sanding sealer on the outside of the piece, and then I applied Woodturner's Blend, buffing it to a high finish. I decided that I was going to put some Woodturner's Blend over the top of the lacquer on the interior, just to really give it a nice shine and make it match the outside. So the last thing I've forgotten to do is add 2 grooves. I'll show you what I was trying to replicate over the image now. So I'll put the image to the right of what I'm doing so you can see. So I need a groove there and a groove there. So we're going to do that now. I then added the grooves using a 3-point tool. They really make a huge difference, the grooves, as they accentuate the piece, and you can really see the contrast between the wood and the colour. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making this piece, and it was really nice to make something that's inspired by someone else's work and sort of use their ideas and how they do that piece. So after watching the demonstration, I took some photos and then had a thought about how I was going to do this last night, and then came into the workshop this afternoon and I created this, and I'm really happy with it. So thank you very much for watching the video.